I think I found a love that's gonna wreck me. Walls are coming down, I'm getting set free. And all these lies that I've believed come crashing down when I'm on my knees. I think I found a love that's gonna wreck me. Break me down and build me up again. Come rushing in, you are the air I'm breathing. Break me down and build me up again. You won't stop, you're not done with me yet. 'Cause you're not done with me yet.
everyone. It is so great to have you join us today. And today we are going to be answering all the questions that you sent in at the beginning of the month. And we're really excited to have these 4 wonderful panelists with you. You guys aren't going to be hearing from me today. Thank goodness, you've heard enough from me. Today you're going to be hearing from these guys. So I'm going to just go around and ask them to introduce themselves, share a little bit about who they are. So I'm going to go Tim first. Tim, who are you? And yeah, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Tim. I'm married to the lovely Beck and have been for 14 years this year. I forgot that right. I'm in trouble otherwise. We've got 2 kids, one who is 7 and one who is 11. And I have been involved in church youth work for many, many years. So probably best part of 30 years I've been involved in church youth work. I know I don't look old enough to do that, but yep, that's me.
I'm Beck. I'm obviously married to Tim. I've been involved in kids work for many years. I taught for 11 years and was involved with teaching sex education, but mainly puberty. So this is quite new, going a little bit further. Yeah, and we're both on the leadership team at Wesley Community Church as well.
Hi, I am Maxine. I am 22 and I'm a member of Wesley and West Road Church, and I am currently working as a church coordinator up in Cambridge, which I love, and I'm very single. That's all.
That's great. Thank you, Maxine. And Ian.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ian. I'm 39 and I've been a Christian for just over 3.5 years now. And I go to Wesley and West Road. I do quite a bit in the church and youth work as well, obviously. So most of you probably know me from that already.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, we're really excited about today. I've got a couple of questions just to intro you, just to get you thinking, and so the young people can get to know a little bit more about you. So the first question, we're talking about sex and relationships, and I want to ask you, do you scrunch or fold? Do you guys know what I mean when I say that? So when you go to the toilet, do you scrunch or do you fold? So Tim, do you scrunch or fold?
I've always found this a ridiculous question, because why would anyone scrunch?
That's funny. Bex, what do you do?
Scrunch. Definitely scrunch.
Maxine?
So undignified. I'm a scruncher.
Yeah. And Ian?
Well, I build a nest, first of all, around with the toilet roll, and then I fold.
You build a nest? What does that mean?
And you put toilet paper around the toilet seat. Have you never done that?
Oh, to clean it.
Oh, yeah,
or like when it's cold.
I've never known anyone to do that before.
I just thought it was common. I've really stitched myself up now.
That is great. I love that. Okay, and then the second one is, what is like a funny, awkward, embarrassing story that you've had either on a date with a boyfriend or just telling someone that you fancy them and it's gone all pear-shaped. So yeah, give us a funny story. Tim, what about you?
Well, obviously, I've always thought that every date I've ever been on has been perfect. So the ladies that I've been with probably will tell a different story. But one that always sticks in my mind, I met up with this lady, and we were wandering down to the restaurant that we were going to. On the way there, a bird pooed on me, which was never a good start. And we got into this restaurant, and it was quite rustic furniture. It was nice sort of low lighting and stuff. And the table was a bit wobbly. So I thought I'll just straighten the leg up, and the leg came off with my hand on the table. So I think I took those as a sign that this is never going to work. So.
No, that's not good. Bex, what about you?
Yeah, I've got quite a long one, but I'll try and paraphrase it. I had arranged a date with somebody at quite a well-known castle, and when I got there to the car park to meet this man, he turned up with his mum, his dad, and his sister. And I thought, okay. And they went off, but he insisted on meeting them at lunchtime and having lunch with them. whereby his mum decided to strip off down to her bra, and she was wearing very short hot pants at the time. His dad was a bit like the mad scientist from Back to the Future. They were quite an odd family. And then after lunch, managed to sort of get away. And I remember going into the toilet thinking, can I actually get out of this date, and climb through the window, and thought, I'm in a castle, I can't get out. And I ended up meeting him after I'd been to the toilet, and he was like very insistent that we got engaged. Bear in mind, this is the first meeting. And I remember making an excuse saying, I really need to go now, and left the date. And I don't think I laughed so much on the way home, thinking there's just no way this is ever going to happen.
But now we've been married for 14 years.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Tim. But yeah, there were lots and lots of things, sort of strange things happened on that date. And from the minute I met him, I thought, no, this is all going, and it just all went downhill. It was terrible.
I can't believe that story.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Mum took off her clothes
Yeah.
in a castle.
Yeah. It got worse. It got.
That's brilliant. I love that.
So that's quite extreme.
Yeah, that is quite
A good
extreme.
story.
Maxine, what about you?
My story is going to be so boring now compared to
No,
that. So I went on a date with a guy at university. I mean, it depends on sort of the age of the people watching this. I don't know if they'll have watched this movie, or if you guys will have. Alice, do you remember the film Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It came out when I was sort of 13, 14. I mean, the title of the movie should have been a really clear warning. There's thongs and snogging. It's just involved in the name of the film. And I had met this guy at church, and then we'd been speaking on Facebook for a few weeks, and we both really liked each other. And somehow, I can't remember if it was him or me, but we decided our first date will be alone in his flat, and we will watch this movie together. And he hadn't seen it before. And it was just a car crash. We hadn't hung out alone before ever, and there was no one else around. It wasn't like a group situation where you could sort of fall back on other people if it was a bit awkward. It was just him and I watching a movie about snogging. And it was just, I'm cringing now just thinking about it.
Yeah, that does sound quite awkward. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
And Ian, what about you?
So, I mean, a lot of you know I used to go to like Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was dating a girl from the Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I took her out to London for her birthday to this famous chocolate shop. And I said to her, like, oh, whilst we're in London, like, it'd be really good. Why don't we go do an AA meeting whilst we're there? And I looked up like the meetings and stuff, and I found one in Soho on a Sunday afternoon. And I like really bigged myself up to this girl. I was like, yeah, I know all about the meetings in London. Awesome, all of that kind of thing. We got in this meeting, and it was just, you could just sense there was something different, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And then when we sat down and the meeting opened, the guy was like, welcome to Sunday's lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And our jaws just dropped, and she sort of looked at me, and I never lived that one down afterwards.
Yeah, not quite the meeting for the two of you.
No.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, let's jump into the questions that some of the young people had. Now we've had that little icebreaker, and I want to ask you some of the questions that the young people came up with a couple of weeks ago. So you've all been prepped with this. You have a bit of an idea about what the questions are. And so the first one that I want to ask you is, if you were engaged to someone, would it be okay to have sex? Tim.
Yes, I'm going to put this in a little bit of context, because I think all these questions need a little bit of context. So I'm going to assume that this person's being asked by someone who's a Christian, and I'm going to assume that it's also someone who is heading towards marriage. Sometimes people get engaged and then seem to stay engaged forever. But I'm going to assume that you're heading towards and planning to get married. So From my point of view, I would say aim towards holding sex off till you get married, because that's a great context to enjoy the sexual union, to be brought together how I believe that God wanted us to be, to enjoy sex within a marriage union. It's a really special thing that you can then share as a couple once you get married and you're totally committed to each other, and you've made your vows, you've committed to each other in front of God for the rest of your life. And then in all aspects of your life, and you can then share in complete openness and in that trusting relationship.
The next question, we talked about boundaries last week on Sunday, and we talked about how important it is to set up boundaries early on, like even before you get into a relationship, before you're with anyone or anything like that. And so what are good boundaries to set up? Kind of one of the questions was how far is too far? And so what would be the boundary line that you think would be best for young people to go into a relationship having?
This is a bit of a classic relationship talk question, this one. So there's a bit of an analogy on this one. So it's the whole thing of if you think about how close to a cliff can I go before I fall off? And if you don't want to fall off the cliff, and I'm going to answer this question assuming that you don't want to fall off the cliff, the best thing to do is to go nowhere near the edge of the cliff. And then if you do stumble a little bit, you're still not going to fall off the edge of the cliff. You're just going to have stumbled a little bit nearer to the edge of the cliff, but you can still pull yourself back. So just in terms of some of the guidelines that I give, there's one of the things that we're always told growing up, which is quite a good one, is if you haven't got it yourself, don't be touching it. Don't start undressing each other. Don't put hands under clothes, things like that. So just trying to avoid those things and putting yourself into situations. And just picking up on the question as well about talking about boundaries. If you are able to talk to your boyfriend, girlfriend about boundaries, that's a brilliant thing. I would also say if you're not able to, because you're not mature enough to talk about them, then you shouldn't be anywhere near in terms of sexual excitement involving each other if you're not able to talk about it. So those sorts of boundaries, yeah, being able to talk about it. It's one of the best things that me and Beck ever done, I think, when we were going out. We were a bit older when we were going out, but to actually sit down and talk about boundaries was a fantastic thing. And I look back on that as a real key point in knowing that this relationship was going to go somewhere.
Yeah, I want to carry on from there. That's one of the things that impressed me actually when we were going out, that Tim actually said, can we have a discussion on where you don't want me to, sit or touch you, or said, how far should I sit if we're sat on the sofa next to each other? Those sorts of things that I used to, oh, that's a bit interesting. I've never even thought of that. Like if he brushed his hand on my leg, that might make me feel a little bit, oh. So we were just very good at, he was very good at saying, Beck, I think we just need to just set some boundaries and some guidelines where I feel comfortable, and where he feels comfortable. But yeah, it's very easy to get quickly, I think, down the wrong route if you don't have those boundaries. But yeah, setting boundaries or rules with each other early on, if you think the relationship's going to be going somewhere, I really advise it.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Going on from what you said about communicating, I think communication in any form on any topic is just the best thing ever in a relationship. Being honest, being clear, not holding back what you think should be happening or shouldn't be happening is really important. And so when it comes to sex and romance and dating, being really clear, and I think that can really help you to respect the person that you're dating and for them to respect you. Being, firm in, I don't want to do this, I don't think we should be doing this, and building a foundation of trust with each other. Also, Bex was saying about, how close should we be on the sofa? I think location is also something to take into account. If you don't want to have sex or anything sort of close to having sex, don't lie on a bed together. Don't shut the bedroom door and sort of think, oh, you know, my parents are out, we'll just go and lie on the bed together. You know, it's such a perfect situation for you both to sort of get carried away in the moment, possibly. It can be a little bit of a trap to fall into. So yeah, more sort of open spaces, open doors. I think that can also, that's an important thing to take into consideration.
And yeah, so how far is too far? Like any sexual act is too far. I like listening to a guy that Alice actually put me onto called Craig Rochelle. He's a pastor in America, and he's got like some relationship sort of series on YouTube. And he said on that, he was like, do not undo, unbutton, unstrap or unzip anything. And I was really challenged by what he said as well. And it makes complete sense. Like, so if you're sort of in a relationship with someone and you're trying to honor God, like you might think it's a bit extreme to say, right, like don't kiss. But basically the second you're in a passionate embrace with someone, you are opening up the floodgates to temptation, you know. And it's like Tim said about the edge of the cliff thing, you know, really, if you want to honor God and actually make it through to your marriage, you know, without having sex with that person, you know, I think you need to be quite radical and extreme, because like Maxine said, you know, like not laying together, not being in a room alone together, you know, being in the house alone together when the parents are out or anything like that. So, you know, it may sound extreme, but you want to give yourself the best chance possible, and that means putting in some pretty healthy boundaries.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is, how can you build a good relationship with someone? You know, we've got young people watching that might be in a relationship. We've got young people that maybe have never been in a relationship. Some of them just don't, that's not even on the radar, and they don't want to, you know, they're not even thinking about that for a second. But how can you build a good relationship?
One of the first thing that came to mind for me is be yourself. There's no point in starting a relationship and trying to be something you're not. It will frustrate the other person, and it will just it will wear you down. You need to be true to who God made you to be, and if the person you're with is the right person and loves you, they will see the beauty of that, and they won't want you to pretend. And something that just came to mind is love languages. That's something I find really interesting. You may not know about them. They are 5, 6 ways that we show and receive love in sort of in a personal way to us. There, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and can someone help me?
Time.
Yes, quality time. Thank you. And if you can figure out how that looks for you and how that looks for the person that you want to build a relationship with, I've just found that can be so beneficial to love them and show them that you love them. And yeah, that can be great as well.
All sorts of different ways. Some things I've just jotted down, so I'm just going to read them off to remind me. So being real, asking people questions, listening to what they're saying, being caring, being available, being supportive. If I was going to point you to a Bible scripture to look at, have a look at 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 to 7, and just have a look at some of the things in there. And you think, if you can treat the other person how that is describing it, that's a good way to make strong relationships.
Yeah, I think putting God first in the relationship is really important. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says that a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. And what that means is you two in a relationship with God, the 3 of you together. So having a godly relationship, you know, like praying together, I think, putting like spirituality in the center of the relationship, you know, doing like Bible studies and stuff like that together. I think that adds to a really healthy relationship. Also, from my own experience of like coming from brokenness, I think to have a healthy relationship with someone, you kind of need to know yourself as well, and you need to be working through your stuff, because whatever like brokenness you're carrying, you're bringing that in to the relationship, and it's going to affect the other person. So it's good to know about the other person, but I think fundamentally in a relationship you need to be looking at yourself, and you need to be working through your stuff, taking ownership of where you were wrong, being humble, you know, putting the other person first, which isn't always easy because we're kind of got that selfish desire inside ourselves. But yeah, I think that would be my biggest bit of advice, would be to be working through your own brokenness and your own issues, so that you don't bring them into the relationship and put them onto the other person.
Thank you, everyone. So the next question is, how is it okay to date someone who isn't a Christian? Tim.
Yeah, it's a good question. From my own point of view, I think if we want to make God number one in our lives, then I don't think going out with a non-Christian is helpful to achieve that. And I think it will actually be detrimental in many, many ways to try and do that. The Bible uses this phrase about not being yoked to an unbeliever. So what it's the picture of two ox who are going in the same direction. They've got this bar across them, that's the yoke. So it's to guide them in the same direction. It's about going in the same direction. So if you want a bit more of a modern picture, if you think about two rowers, if they're rowing in opposite directions, then it's not going to be helpful. And sadly, I know many Christians who have started going out with non-Christians or got married to non-Christians who are now nowhere in their faith. So I think it creates a lot of difficulties, because if you think further on in your relationship, just even think long term and just think like, okay, when we have kids, you know, do the kids go to church or don't they go to church? You know, you've got one who might want to go, one who doesn't want to go, and all sorts of different things, you know, that you might want to be talking about. You might want to be talking about your spiritual experiences, and you're then talking to someone who's got no idea what you're talking about, and doesn't have that same connection to what should be the number one most important thing that's going on in your life. So I would avoid it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think I know how tough it can be when you really like somebody, and you're praying really hard. God, please, can this person become a Christian, or can we just be together and it will all work out? And it's really, really tough. But I really think it can only work when somebody is on the same page as you, on the same journey as you. Someone once said to me, "Oh, isn't it good that you can have differences of opinion? You know, you can have discussions and things." And I thought, you know, yeah, differences of opinion is good, but not with this. You know, faith for me, it's the single most important thing in my life. It defines me. And how can I be with somebody who doesn't feel the same way? You know, faith can come up and does come up every day in what we're going through, in decisions we make, in our relationships with other people, you know, our friendships, our family relationships. And it will just be really, really hard if every day when you are bringing faith into your life, the person who you have decided to be with is taking faith away from your life. And maybe it can work for a short period of time, but yeah, as Tim said, you're raising children, you're dealing with grief, with hardships as you get older, the loss of people. You know, you're constantly going to be hitting a wall in your relationship.
And Ian?
Yeah, completely agree. And yeah, I love that verse that Tim used about not being yoked together with an unbeliever. Obviously, because I come from a secular background, you know, I've had a lot of years out in the world, and I'm very familiar with what the secular dating scene looks like. And the fact is, you know, people, if you're going to date a non-Christian, they're going to have different values and different expectations. It's going to be hard enough for someone to accept like the sex before marriage thing. So even if you found someone really respectful who kind of understood that, are they going to understand the boundaries that need to be in place to make that happen? You know, secular dating is going to involve stuff like expectations of hanging out together in your bedroom. Maybe someone's going to want to share a bed. What, like, they could say, oh, well, you could still stay over though, couldn't you? We just won't have sex. There are going to be things like weekends away, all of these kind of things that are kind of expected and normal in a secular relationship, and they're just not going to work if you're trying to honor God. So I think, you know, there can be this whole idea of, wow, we could share our faith with them and stuff like that. But the fact is their values and expectations are going to be different, and it's going to more than likely, you know, take you down the wrong path. It's hard enough to honor God in this context when you're dating a Christian, just because of the power of the temptation. But to be doing it with somebody who doesn't get your faith and the expectations you have, it's just adds weight to it, doesn't it? It makes it a lot more difficult.
Yeah. I just want to ask, so I'm going to ask Ian, what advice would you give to someone who is dating a Christian right now? Or not dating a non-Christian right now?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a big question, but obviously it's for that person to work out. You know, I can't sort of dictate to people, but, you know, it would probably be best to kind of end that relationship and to, you know, hang in there for God to bring the right person, because, you know, God's got somebody in mind planned for all of us, that perfect person that we're going to come together with. So yeah, give that a chance and just, you know, trust God that God's going to bring you the right person that you can settle down with and have an amazing marriage and relationship with.
The next question is, how can peer pressure affect our attitude to sex? And how do we as Christians find resilience to that peer pressure? Bex?
Yeah, peer pressure can be really difficult to deal with. So actually, sometimes it's changing your friends, having friends that understand you, support you, getting involved with your youth group at church, things that you do, things that you read, things that you see, that you know, programs that might promote it, maybe switch over. Yeah, that's, I think, how to be more resilient is to just watch what you're looking at, watch what conversations you're getting into. Maybe if there's a conversation about it, try and get yourself out of it, walk away, go and do something else. It isn't easy. I think it's probably got harder and harder with all the social media, all the adverts you switch on. Some nights you look at the adverts and every advert is sexually orientated to try and sell their product, even a car or a bike, they somehow get it in. So it's maybe averting your eyes when those sorts of things are on. Yeah, it's not an easy one.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me with this question is, you know, the influence and the pressure for youngsters with the world around us at the moment. You know, pop music, it's just full of kind of sex and stuff about casual hookups and all of that kind of stuff. You know, the movie world, even like romantic novels and stuff like that. So there's so much pressure with that and on social media. And obviously, you know, the more you're engaging in that kind of stuff, the more pressure it's going to put on you. But I think, yeah, my two best bits of advice for this is what everybody's already said, really. It's good friendship groups, people who are gonna, you know, respect you, who aren't gonna be the, you know, the mockers who take the mickey out of you, and also strong role models. You know, if you've got people that you can look up to who can help you with that, you know, if your role models are gangster rappers, for instance, you know, you're going to be more inclined to want to do what they do. If your role models are strong Christian guy in church, you know, that's a really positive influence.
Yeah. Ian, you're on a roll. I'm going to ask you this question first. So it's kind of linked to what we've been talking about anyway, about peer pressure. So how can we share our views about sex to our friends and people who aren't Christians in society? So Ian, you go first.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is a really good question. I had to really think about this. I came across it actually with one of my best friends who I've been mates with for years, and he's a really lovely guy. Not a Christian, but when I started trying to talk to him about like why my views had changed on sex and all that kind of stuff, but this is when I'd first become a Christian, so wasn't really armed with stuff that well, you know, and he came up with some good kind of counter arguments. But I think now, you know, a few more years down the line and being able to understand it better, you know, I love the illustration of you know, two cardboard cutouts of a man and a woman, and you glue them together and let them dry and then pull them apart and see what mess it makes. You know, bits of this one are going to be stuck to that one and bits of that one are going to be stuck to the other one. And that's what it's like when we have these, you know, relationships and sexual relationships, and then we break up with that person. You know, we're taking a bit of them with us and we're leaving bits of us with them, you know, and it's really damaging. And I think another thing is, you know, there's some really strong arguments for, you know, the consequences of, you know, just this casual attitude to sex. You know, that there's stuff like, you know, like the broken families, the fatherless children, you know, the abortion rates, sexual infections and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's another quite strong argument for, you know, why God's way and God's will is the right way.
And Tim?
Yeah, and I was just interested again about the question and sort of where the question's coming from when it asked about how can we share our views about sex with our friends and people who aren't Christians in society. So one of the things I would say is I would be leaning towards, first of all, just sharing your belief in Jesus before you sort of start venturing into telling people where you think they might be wrong in something. So you just share Jesus' love and how much he loves them and honours them as a person. And then if you've got genuine, I think as everyone else has already shared, I think if you've got genuine friends, things come up in conversation because people are fascinated by this whole Christian thing of waiting. And so I've had a number of conversations, same as Maxine, people who don't agree with me and walk off and still don't agree with me. But, you know, but because they're people who respect me and I respect them, we're able to have a conversation about it and just share our opinions, same as we would on all sorts of different subjects. And so, yeah, so I wouldn't be looking to batter anyone over the head with the Bible on this one. If you want to batter them over the head, tell them about how much God loves them.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I remember when I was actually in high school, I'd go to a party and I had friends that would introduce me to new people and say, hey, this is Alice. She's a Christian. She doesn't have sex before marriage. And then walk off and leave me with this person that I'd never met before with that intro. It was quite a conversation starter. So it does come up, but it is a really great chance to actually talk about Jesus. So I love where you went with that, all of you. So thank you. We've got two questions left. We've got one of them is, how do we control our emotions, urges, and lust as young men? Now, I'm going to include young women in this because I think it's really important that girls face the same struggles as men do. So, yeah, Tim, do you want to kick us off? Yeah,
I'm really glad someone's asked this question because I think actually it's a really mature question to ask. So well done to whoever asked this question. Again, as we've mentioned before, it's a massive issue. And again, please, if you're struggling with this, please don't think you're alone on this. This is someone I can't talk from a woman's point of view, I can talk from a bloke's point of view. It is something that many people have struggled with. It's not a new thing. You look in the Bible, King David famously struggled with it. He looked down, saw a naked woman, and he was all over the place. So this is not a new thing, and it's a big struggle, and it will continue to be a struggle, particularly when you're younger and your body's going through all sorts of different changes and things like that. And there are all sorts of things, you know, physiologically going on in your body as well, that you're experiencing. So just recognise, as we've said before, just recognise how you are and accept that is how you are. And I'm great that you've asked this question. I'd hook on to some of the things that we've already spoken about, just in terms of what's feeding your mind. That would be a big one for me. So think about the things that you are watching, the things that you're listening to, the things that you're reading. Have a look at what are the things that are your feeds on your phone. Even in music, I mean, you know, you can only look at some of the things that have been big sellers over the last year. You know, not helpful pop videos and lyrics, all sorts of stuff on telly and YouTube and all the rest of it. Just think about what you're feeding and what you're putting into your mind. Stepping away from temptation. Another Bible just illustration. Joseph, very famously, have a look at his story. Joseph was in a situation where he was being seduced. Thing he done a runner. Didn't even take his jacket. He was off. And that's a really good thing. Just step away. If this is an area you're struggling in, look at the areas where at particular times where you're struggling, and really just try and step away from them. Even think about, this may be a massive one for you. Give someone access to all your gadgets. Huge way to stop things. You know, it's something that I've always had open, available gadgets. Accountability is another one. Get someone praying for you, someone that you can talk to. Again, something that I've had for many years. I've got an accountability partner, and we bounce things off each other. Just to give you a little example, so something that you might have as a bit older. If I go away and I'm staying on my own in a hotel for a couple of nights, I'll contact a mate of mine, and we'll make sure, and he does the same with me if he's away, and we'll always text each other during the evening, just to make sure that the telly's off and gadgets are off and all those sorts of things that might influence us while our mind is not concentrated on other things. Prayer and keeping yourself busy. There are a couple of other tips. Loads from me.
I think he's covered everything.
48 years of struggle.
And I want to add to that, actually. Tim, when he goes away, since we've been married, still does that. He still has his friends who he texts and say, please make sure I'm not watching anything on telly, which is really good for us as our marriage as well. But it's not just me. He has an accountability partner. And I want to really emphasize that for me, before getting married, was having a friend that I would regularly pray with about. It was somebody that I could talk to about most things. And yeah, just getting them to pray where you find something particularly difficult or something that's tempting you more than you want it to be, then ask for prayer. Get someone to pray with you regularly and text you or message you and say, are you doing this? And if you've had a slip, really don't let the guilt build up either. Forgive yourself, God forgives you, and start again. But yeah, having somebody that you can talk to or pray with, it could be Alice, you know, just say to Alice, please, can you pray about this? Because I think this could be a tempting week, or I'm a bit hormonal, whatever, just somebody you can ask to pray with.
Yeah, just what Beck said as well. Once you're sort of getting things out in the open, saying, oh, I struggled with this, or last week I really messed up, it's sort of, you can say it, and then you can let it go and you can move on. Yeah. If you're slipping up and not telling anyone, it can become a habit. It can become something that's really sort of festering inside of you, something that you're ashamed of, or that you think, oh, no one knows about that, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Openness is just, yeah, it's so important.
Yeah, so I've got 3 things on this. So the first one is pretty much what other people have said. It's about like not polluting your mind. You know, you might think, okay, right, I don't look at pornography, so I'm doing all right. But I think in the last 3 years, like I've had to realize that it goes a lot deeper than that. And it's literally like the stuff that's on Netflix, the stuff that's on Amazon, you know, like these box sets and all of that kind of stuff. That can be seen as like, oh, this is acceptable, everybody watches this. But if there's nudity or sex scenes in there, it's going into your mind. It's putting thoughts in your head and visions in your head that you don't need. So I've really had to start kind of stripping back what I watch. There's so many good things you can watch that doesn't have sex and nudity in it. So I would really be getting quite strict on that. Secondly, so Jesus said to look at another man's wife lustfully is to commit adultery in your head. So obviously we find the opposite sex attractive, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we're supposed to, if we see a beautiful woman, it's okay to think, oh wow, she's a beautiful woman. But it's when those thoughts start turning lustful and sexual that then, you know, you're entertaining it, and then it's a problem. So I was given a bit of advice by the wonderful Victor Jack, and he told me that when you see a beautiful woman, pray 3 things. Firstly, pray thanking God for making someone so beautiful. Pray and ask God to help you to be respectful towards that woman. And thirdly, pray to God, asking him to help that woman respect herself and her body. So I think that's a really good thing you can do, which puts God into the center of it. And then the third thing, and this has really helped me, and it's a game changer, and this comes to like women within, or the opposite sex within the church. We need to start thinking of other people in the church as our brothers and sisters. So as soon as I start thinking of the girls in church as my sisters in Christ, it just changes everything. You know, like, you start seeing them as a sister, and it really just helps. It just straight away, you know, like, I don't fancy my sister, you know, obviously. So when I'm in Christ and I see you're my spiritual sisters, it just takes that away straight away, you know, and it's a really, really good, healthy thing that I've found that's helped me quite a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And I think it's really important. I just want to touch on something that Beck said. If you follow those urges, and you know things get too passionate, you end up doing stuff with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or you have sex, or anything like that, don't let guilt and shame stay with you, because God offers you forgiveness, and we have a chance every single day to wake up and rewrite our story. You are not lost, you're not doomed. Speak to God about it, speak to someone else about it, get some accountability, tell them what you've done, and then ask God to help you to not do it again. Don't let guilt and shame run your life, because God has so much more for you, and he offers you so much freedom from all of the sin and the bad things that we've done. So please, 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 speak to someone, speak to God, and rewrite your story. We all have that opportunity to do that every single day. So I just thought it was really important to say that, because we've been talking a lot about kind of the negative effects that sex and sexual things and thoughts can do to us. But remember that God's grace is bigger than all of that. It doesn't give us a free pass, doesn't mean that we can do whatever we want, but it does mean that God's grace is bigger than any of the sins that we do. So he will always love you. Now we've got one last question, and we've got 7 minutes left. So what I'm going to say is we're going to ask the question, and it's a big question, so it's okay if we say I don't know. And the question is, how should we respond to gender and identity issues, such as transgender or pansexual, or really just the whole LGBTQ community? Because it's really hard as Christians to know, what do we do and how should we respond to that in our schools? So Tim.
I think the first answer to that question is with great sensitivity, grace and respect. And I think if your starting point is that, then you're on a good firm footing. Remember that whatever people are living as a lifestyle, whether you agree with it or not, think about people, how God thinks about them, and try and look at people with God's eyes, and the care and the love that he shows to them. There's a verse I just picked up from Ephesians 5. It says, be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. So I'd advise you, first of all, to be a person of love, and to reach out and to be a loving person. This is actually a huge subject, and I think, and I'm going to pass this back to Alice, I think it's a great one to discuss in your group and talk about real issues and work them through. And, you know, it's a live issue, and it's an issue that I think is going to become a bigger issue for us as Christians. But well done for whoever's raised that, because again, it's a great question, and it's a great one to work through. So I'm not actually going to give you a pat 5-minute answer, because I don't think there is one. But work it through and do it. Live your life with love and work through things with your leaders.
Great, thank you. Bex?
Yeah, it's to love the person. You might not necessarily agree with what they're doing, but I think overriding everything is to love them and see them, as Tim said, how God would see them. and you might find that actually there's quite a broken person inside. Oh, it might not be, but often you might find that. So overriding everything, love, 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 love.
Yeah, I mean, so before I came to faith, I used to do a lot of work in the performing arts industry, and a lot of like, you know, I was tech crew for like a lot of theatre shows and all of that. And you find there's quite a lot of like gay guys in that industry, like the actors and the dancers. And I always just got on with them so well, you know, I love them to bits. And I think when I first did Alpha, it was one of the things I really struggled with, you know, like what God says about homosexuality and stuff like that. But like, yeah, it's like what everybody else has said. Like, we need to love people. We need to be graceful, merciful. And the fact is, you know, it's very clear in Scripture. We all fall short of God's perfection. We all have gone astray. You know, we all sin. We all need Jesus. So sometimes there can be a tendency to put this kind of sin in a different category, but there's no category of sin. You know, like it's the same as somebody who struggles with being judgmental, or, you know, somebody who has anger issues, or there's no like hierarchy of sin. So, you know, it's just about loving and honoring them, and, you know, being respectful and praying for them, I think. And, you know, we don't need to kind of single it out, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And that is the end of our questions. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you, because you've been so honest and open in sharing your experiences, your thoughts and your beliefs. And so we're so, so grateful. I really hope that you guys watching, all the young people, have found this helpful, and that you're able to walk away being more informed in knowing what to do, what boundaries to set, and in how to speak about sex and sexuality and things like that with your friends at school. So we will all be praying for you as you're dealing with this issue, and you can speak to us about it as well. So we're all around. I am just saying that without having asked them, but I think it's safe to say that all these guys would be up for chatting to you about anything. So thank you so much, and take care, and we'll see you on Zoom in a few minutes.